Yeah, thank you, Alex. So I'm here joined with Geon Kunst. I'm Chris Triest. We will introduce ourselves shortly. So Geon will be moderating the Discord while I click through the slides. So you can ask him. So you can ask us stuff, and we will try to answer. So first off, we are helping the E2FC this year by hosting the Quake 3 Arena machines. We have done some internal great. Tournaments at night, and now we have also created a whole gaming environment for everyone to join. So in the Quake 3 channel in the E2E Discord, you can see the information about the Quake 3 servers. And one thing is that the servers don't work on DNS name correctly. That's an issue with the game. So just type in those IP addresses that are in there. I've posted them in there. So that's one thing I want to say. So now let's go over to our presentation. So, I want to introduce you guys to Geon Kunst. He is a principal consultant at Rawworks, and he is our product owner for our cloud, and he is also a well-known guy in the Citrix community. Yes. So the next slide. So what do we want to accomplish in this presentation? What is our goal? Well, what we want to do is we want to show you what microapps are and why you should use them. So what's the purpose of microapps, and yeah, why should you use them? It's actually quite easy goal. So the first thing is what I want to share you with you guys is the vision of Rawworks when it comes to EUC. And actually, when we look at EUC, we see that in the yesterday, everyone was working on VDI, published desktops, thin clients, and IT was the driving force behind the workplace. IT locked everything down. I don't know if you guys have been into a VDI environment where users cannot even change their own background picture or the colors or even not their which applications they want to use. No, everything is driven by IT. You must work like this and must do like that. And for a lot of companies, that even still today it works still great. So those companies are there. But what we are seeing more today is that companies, at least here in the Netherlands, are using more and more bring your own and choose your own devices. So they have a full full uh, laptop with Windows 10 on there, and they can do anything on there. But yeah, but the problem now is that within that environment, people don't have access to their applications. At least their applications are not centrally managed. So usually from this choose your own or bring your own device, they say, well, just sign back into that VDI, just sign into that published desktop. And what's happening then is that people are locked into a published desktop on a laptop with just a 13-inch screen. And the problem is they then expect to work completely in that published desktop. So what we are noticing now during Corona is that a lot of people are working with Teams and Zoom and that kind of stuff, and we see a lot of companies struggling to give a great Teams performance on their Citrix published desktop because there are a couple of things that you need to require before Teams works perfectly. And so most companies here in the Netherlands, they just say, well, you got that Windows 10 device. That's a great device. Why don't you use Team locally and just switch between those that published desktop? Well, the issue then is, of course, well, you just have one screen, that 13-inch screen, and that just doesn't work for companies. for the end user. The end user feels stuck between switching locally and publishing. So our vision then is for tomorrow, the future is one workspace portal. And then within that portal, you find all your applications. So you find SaaS applications, you find local applications like Teams, and you find legacy applications, but you find them as published app and not as a published desktop. So that is the first step to workplace of tomorrow. But to be really in the workplace of tomorrow, that workplace must then accelerate your work and make you work faster and more efficient. And that is where the microapps come in. So using machine learning, AI, quick actions, smart thinking, that can accelerate really your work. And that is what we do with the microapps.
Applications, the main idea of a micro app is stop using an app and just talk to them. So the idea is to get the basic things you need to do in the app and put them in your workspace portal where you can just input the data or request the data you need and click apply or retrieve, and then you get the information. So you don't have to log on to your financial application or your vacation planning to see if you have any days left. You can just click on the app that's in your workspace portal that's available. You get the information you need. That makes your work more efficient, and it makes it easier for the users because they don't have to swap between all the applications. And an extra advantage on that is that because all the security is all taken care of by the portal, users don't have to log on again. So that makes it a lot easier for the user, a lot quicker to find their stuff, to get their work done, to find their information. So hopefully they will be more efficient by that and less annoyed by all things IT. And that's the ultimate goal. So to illustrate that, we've got a few business cases we've done in the Netherlands with customers, and we wanted to highlight two of them. So first being the municipality of Hollands Kroon, where we did an implementation on helping them the users more into the self-service part of things. So the idea was if a user wants access to an application, he has to file a help desk ticket. And we thought, well, can this be done easier? So what we did is we created an app, and in that workspace app, used on that workspace app, you can click request application access. Then you can choose the application you want. There's a notification sent to one of the admins on his mobile phone on the workspace app he has installed there from Citrix. And he gets a notification and he can say allow or decline or apply or deny, whatever. And then it is, then the rest is done automatically. So in a company like this, where the users work not only during the day but also in the evening and the weekends, it's easy because if a user needs something, he can ask it. The admin that is on call can do it from sitting on the couch binge watching Netflix. He can say apply or deny, and then he's done. He doesn't have to log on to a system or any other crazy stuff. It's just click and go. So it makes it easier for the user as well as the admin in this case. So that's a real cool use case.
So just to give a quick summary of what Geon just told us about Hollands Kroon, and it told us about application as code. There is a Gartner research paper done that showed that task workers, like on a financial department or whatever, are using between 5 and 9 apps. So if they have 5 to 9 applications always open, and they are switching between those applications the whole day. So they're switching. And what are we doing with this application? We are doing just two things. We are doing two things with applications: consume data and edit data. So you get data and you edit the data. So that's all that you're doing with applications. So with microapps, we can bring all the data to one portal for you to view and even make some actions that you are doing quite often, like edit a declaration that something comes in or a new invoice. Make that with a microapp. So with Holland's Chrome, we did this not only for the users, but also what Geon just told with the admins, because Holland's Chrome doesn't have work hours. They are a company that just focus on results. And yeah, so for the admins to at night acknowledge self-service requests is great way. So another quick one we want to show you guys, and then we're gonna do some demo stuff, is Topdesk. So we created an integration for Microapps with Topdesk. Topdesk is a ticketing system, and yeah, just the quick recap of this is the return of investment was really high. So the users at the help desk got less phone calls because more and more users uh, are getting are doing tickets again themselves, and they even saw an increase of the total amount of tickets. So we had less there were less steps that anyone needed to do to perform those actions, so they did created more tickets, and that's always great to get more insight in your environment. So that is stuff that Microapps can do. So now let's just build a microapp together to show you guys what is necessary to do a micro app. So let me just switch here to my here. Okay, so I'm gonna use, to build a micro app, you need an API. So you need some way that your application will give data throughout an API. So if your application has a public API, that is great. If your application doesn't have an API, well, then you can maybe build an API. So that is something that I touch on later. So you can try to look in Logic Apps. But for now, to just show you how a micro app works, I'm going to build a news API. A news micro app with the news API.org. So you can just go to this website, get a free account, and get an API key. Then under documentation, what do we want to do? We want to get the top headlines. So here we see a URL, and this URL is the API call to get this data. This data is then formatted as a JSON, and JSON is the thing that also microapps talk. So microapps understand JSON. So one thing you always want to do when going with APIs is, well, you can test these APIs. So I can just go to here and then enter that API. Well, this doesn't really show a great result, but at least I know now that the API works. Well, there is a special web browser. It's called Postman. And this is a really special browser because it doesn't really have a graphical interface. It is just an interface. You paste your API and it automatically shows you which query parameters are in your API. So everything after the question mark are query parameters. And when you press send, it gives you the JSON back in a nice format. So this is really a web browser for APIs, to test APIs. So here I now have 20 news items, but I want to give my users some more to search through. So I want to have 100 news items. So I'm going to go back to the news API website. And here I'm going to look into the documentation if I can find anywhere where I can get 100 news items. Well, here we find page size, and that's 100. So you can get a maximum of 100 news items. So what I can do now to test if this is correct, I can add another parameter. So I just type the parameter in here and I set it into 100 and I press again send. And now I get 100 news items. And I got the complete API call here. So now I want to create a micro app from this so that I can give my users the daily news every day and I give them something they can search through. So we go into Citrix Cloud. If you don't have a Citrix Cloud account and don't have a Microapps account, you can go to developer.citrix.com and you can get a free test instance for 30 days and you can just renew that one indefinitely. I think I'm doing it already for months and months and months.
Yeah, same
here. So then you can go to Citrix Cloud, just set up the Citrix workspace as you normally do, and then you can go into the microapps. So let's click on Add Integration. Well, Citrix has out-of-the-box templates, but those are just for a few American big SaaS companies. What we want to do is we want to create a custom integration. We're going to call this news API. Here we fill in the base URL. So if we look back at Postman, the base URL is just this beginning part. So make it as short as possible, but it must be a valid URL. So you cannot just type in HTTPS. It has to be a valid URL. And yeah, there is an authentication method for this API. What I already told you, we have an API key in our query parameter. So I can just gonna choose query parameter. Everything I'm doing also today, I have created a YouTube video where I do the same in. So I'm going really fast now, just for the sake of time. But you can also go to my website, workspaceguru.com, and then find there the YouTube link to what I'm doing right now. And there you can easily follow through, and you can even slow me down in YouTube. You can say playback slower, and you can of course pause. So I'm now going to fill in this API key. Why I'm filling that in here in the service integration? Well, the service integration and every API call I do from there will have this authentication with it. So Chris is my name. so if I have to ask a question to myself, what is then the integration? Well, Citrix caches the data from the API so that the user automatically gets that data really quick. So not if a user clicks, I want to see the latest news articles, that it first has to get that data from the API. No, it caches it. And an integration allows you to cache it. So you here have tables and you have the data loading. So I'm now going to create an endpoint for those top news stories. So top news. And let's get back to Postman. So now I take this whole URL and I'm going to paste it as endpoint. So what you have to know about Microapps, it's not as smart as what? It's not as smart as for instance this Postman. So I just pasted this, and then Postman says, well, this is a query parameter and stuff. So now I have to create those myself by clicking here on create query parameter. Nice if you're not English speaker. And I have to create 2 query parameters. So the first one is country, and we're gonna get the US news. And the second one is page size to 100. And now one thing I have to do is then delete those query parameters here from the endpoint URI. I also delete the one from API key, as you can see, because that API key I already entered that in the whole integration. So it will always send that one. If I now click test service, everything is all right, and I should have the same output as I had in Postman, and I got that. So from here, we're going to create a database. What I already said, Citrix caches the data from Microapps. So this is also something you have to think about with your customers. If they that Citrix caches the data. So if you don't want your data to be at Citrix, then you there's no way out of there. So yeah, sorry. So okay, so this is the JSON structure of the results, and what we do want to get, this is a bit tricky. So there is one object here, but then here it starts with a new object, articles. And we don't want to have that status and the results, we just want those articles. So what we can do is browse to that articles by clicking that the root path is articles. So just start from articles. This is something, yeah, this is a bit different. This is something that you just have to know, but okay. Then from there, this will be our database. So one thing I want to do is the content is now maximum 255 characters. Well, news items can be a little bit bigger, so I'm going to do that up to 1,000 characters. And I have to set a primary key, a unique identifier for those articles. Well, I can use URL. It would be, of course, really strange if 2 news articles would have the same URL. That would be strange, because something that is always unique. So this is my data integration, and it's now running. So it's now filling the table. So here you can see the tables, and it has now filled this table. So I got this data, and now I can present this data in a microapp to our users. So if I'm going to go to News API, I'm going to go back and I'm going to click Add Microapp. And now it's going to create a microapp that we're going to give to our users. I'm going to edit this, and I'm going to start off with a details page. So a details page lets you show something from your database in detail. So this is article. So here we're really going to focus into one article, and I'm going to show you in a minute how this relates to the user experience. So what I'm going to select, give me all those fields from the database in my details page, in my article page, and here I got everything from one article. Now here with Microapps, we can do some cool stuff. We can arrange something. So I see that the source ID is empty, so I'm just gonna delete that one. This published ad is a bit weird, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna format that as a date and time. And hey, that looks much better. Looks a lot better. The content one is empty. That is a bit strange because that one should be full, but we have at least a description of the article and an author. But here is the title down here. That's not so handy. Let's put that on top. And what you can do with flexible grids. So here you have a flexible grid. And with this flexible grid, you can put stuff next to each other. So I'm going to say published ad and the source name. I'm going to put that over here. It only needs one row. So I can make it more pretty. I can put some makeup on the article. A nice little line divider there. And we also have images here. And I want to show this as an image. So let's delete this one and just select here image. And now it will, let's go down. Come on, Microapps, you can do this. So this is always a little bit tricky with working with a web thing like this. But now I can say here that where is the image? Well, this is the URL to the image. Let's put them in the center and a large image. And now I got an image under our news article. The last thing I want to do is this URL. I want to put an action on there. Go to URL. And then insert variable, go to the URL from the database. So if you now click here, it will open in this article. So if I do a preview, this is what our end users will see if they go to the article. That is looking quite nice, and we have the link. It works. It goes to the article. So this is great for our news app. So what I'm now going to do is, this is also one thing you need to know about Microapps. You have no save button when it comes to pages. So you just click to pages and it is saved. And we're going to add the second page really quick. We're going to add the table. And this is the first thing that we want to show our user, is this table where we have the source, the title, and when it's published. So these are those 100 articles are now here. And what we want to do is we want to link that when a user clicks here, it goes to that article page. And we do this by selecting that they are related to detail pages, and then under action, go to page article. Again, this is going really, really fast, but again, this is also all in my blog and in a 1-hour video that you can follow. The next thing I want to do is I want to make sure that people can search those news articles. So I'm going to get the text input field. I'm going to label it as search. And what I'm going to do is on the data side, I'm going to set a filter that the title contains something that you type into the component search that I just labeled. So if I preview this, I now have created a microapp for my user in which they see all the news articles and in which they can search articles. So if I search for Corona, for instance, I get those articles and they can click on the details and they have the full article and they even can click to that article. So this is great. So just a little bit of data I got from an API, I'm creating a whole user experience around that. So I think that this is, of course, a really, really awesome feature to just build something like that in a few minutes time. So the last thing I need to do is I give this a name. So news E to EVC. I can give it an icon. So this is our action that we then create. And here I say that enable it is an action, and which action go to the all articles page, save. And now if I look at my user, so I already built one and I also enabled notifications. So here you can see that our user is in the Citrix workspace, and under apps, they find their SaaS applications, their legacy applications, all that kind of good stuff. But they also have their activity feed, which features now news. And under actions, let's refresh this. They should now have the, yeah, it takes some time, but they have the news demo. And here you see all those articles. And you can search throughout those articles. And you get that information. So this is the demo I built yesterday. So that's the one from the E2E. It will be there, but it's always a bit giving a user a new application and then it's showing up in Citrix Cloud always takes some bit time, but I showed you how it will look. So yeah, that is building a micro app in like 10 minutes or something, and you can go nuts with all kinds of stuff with notifications. And this is just a public news API, but of course you can use your own APIs or maybe even create your own API. So again, I'm gonna now hand it off to Geon, my colleague.
Okay, so if you look at the Citrix, Chris already mentioned that you have the template microapps you could use, and we showed you a small part about our own API or our own microapps that you can build. And as Chris already mentioned, you can use your own APIs by, for example, using Azure Logic Apps, where you can use the power of Azure to connect to applications that are, for example, on premises, and they don't, for example, don't have an API, but you could use PowerShell. So then you could build an Azure Logic app that could leverage the on-prem environment to get the information from there. And if you master this bit of the toolbox, then you have a whole new set of things to play with, because then every application is accessible, even legacy. And we have done some proof of concepts with applications that didn't even have an API, but we could script against them, and we could get information from that application into the Citrix Workspace portal. So that's really cool. So it is the presentation is called Citrix Microapps for the win, and it is for the win because the possibilities are endless, but there are also some pitfalls you need to think about when you're building the apps and deploying them at customers. So I see the line out is working great. Yeah, it's good to have a technical partner in the room. Okay, so some common pitfalls. Citrix Microapps is not for the mouse clicking professional. I like my mouse and I cannot lie, and I do a lot of my work with mouse and keyboard. But as Chris showed, getting the API data, using Postman, and all those things, that is a lot of knowing what you do, and it's not all just click on this button and something will happen. So that's something you need to think about, because it's not just something you can, building these apps is not something that's everyone's cup of tea. So another thing is when you're starting with microapps, start small. Don't say, okay, what are all the things we do in applications? Let's script everything into microapps. That's not how it works. You should start small and start building on the platform, creating the ultimate workspace as you go. Another thing is that some implemented settings are not always live, as Chris demonstrated earlier. Creating a micro app or changing settings, sometimes it takes a bit because it's cloud before it's live, and also retrieving data. You can have timeouts on the data retrieval. The Citrix Micro App portal will send you information about that, but it's something to be aware of, that everything you script into the portal doesn't always instantaneously work, because we had some things where we would implement a change and we thought, hey, the change doesn't work. Okay, well then we'll script it another way, and then you did 3-4 changes in an application, in a micro app, in 5 minutes, and you didn't even know if it worked at one time or it stopped working, because there's a little bit of delay. So another thing to think about when you're using micro apps is the cloud changes constantly. So once a button is on the left, tomorrow it will be on the right. API keys can change. Citrix always is working and tinkering with the portal, so things might work a little bit different and buttons may change place, and that is a lot that can cause a bit of irritation to the users and to yourself if an application is not working, or the button that has been on the left for the last 5 months is now on the right side of the screen or is called differently. One other thing that you need to keep in mind, that's what Chris already mentioned, Citrix has a copy of the last sync. So what Chris showed in the demo was he retrieved the latest 100 articles, and those are cached by Citrix. And that's not a bad thing. It can be a bad thing. It depends on the data and how your company thinks about the data being cached by a third party somewhere. So bear in mind and talk to the security people in your firm about this before you implement it. So data shown to the user is not always real time, and implemented settings, that's what we talked about. So watch out for API changes, that's always a good thing. So if you have applications from third-party vendors that are running and you're using, watch the release notes for new versions of the software in the cloud, as all the vendors like to change things and not always make it very clear that things are changing. And the last thing that I want to tell you is watch out for expiration authentication tokens. So Chris had an API token that he put in the portal that works fine, but it could be that the token expires at some time, and then the micro app wouldn't work, and you would have data that's outdated and not the last version of the data. So watch out when you're doing that the authentication tokens keep on being valid. So, and then from personal experience, common pitfalls, we did a project at a customer where we thought, well, it was a bit in the early days. You thought, okay, well, let's have a copy of the complete database in the Citrix backend, because then we can get the data to the users in the quickest way. There is a throttling on the Citrix API. So there's a big API. We did a big query on the API, but every query created in a child API, getting even more data from the database, and that 5,000 threads we pushed through the Citrix APIs, and it broke the Kubernetes backend. So that caused a bit of service disruption, at least at our customer, and perhaps someone else, a few other customers. So bear in mind that what you do, that you think about the data you're pulling through the system, because it created an XML that was, I think,
the JSON file was 50 MB.
Yeah,
and then it took another 5,000 child API calls, which it sent in the same second.
Yeah, so it created an enormous JSON file. It sent a lot of API queries, so it just broke the stuff. So, and that's not what you want. So we talked to Citrix about this, and we apologized, of course. And they said, well, okay, this is something we did not expect, but it's good to know that it's possible. So we have to build something to counter that. So they are now looking at throttling the child API so that we cannot break the backend again. So that's something we got in our own experience. So Citrix micro apps for the win, yes, but you have to look at a few things to keep your systems online. So, and that's that. So that's our presentation. So we're going to look at the Discord now to see if there are any questions.